Hey, what's up, y'all? The biggest tip that I can give y'all as a kayak fisherman is to get familiar with what protected waters is and being able to find the protected water on those windy days. So when should you be concerned about fishing protected water? I would say about 12 miles an hour. You know, maybe 10. About 12, you start to get some white chop. It's where the waves or the chop is breaking, and for a kayak fisherman, 12 miles an hour plus can be a little tough, especially if you just have a paddle kayak. If you have a pedal drive, you can get through some stuff. But it's definitely possible. I've been through 18 to 20 mile an hour winds in the open chop, and I definitely got back with my pedal drive, and I've done it quite a few times, but it's pretty sketchy even for me. So especially if I have a trip to guide on, I'm looking for some of my spots that will be protected. Don't really want to put my customers through too much. Unfortunately, we do sometimes cross a little chop to get to the protected stuff in order to fish comfortably. So you know, if you're less experienced, I would say only pick the absolute protected area the whole way. So what is protected water? Protected water means that the wind is coming off of that bank. And if the wind is coming off of that bank, it's going to be completely calm right there. And the further you get away from that protected bank, the more the chop is going to build. The easiest way to remember it for me is if it's a northern wind, I'm looking for a northern bank. Same thing for a southern wind, I'm looking for a southern bank. And same thing for west or east. So the easiest way to figure out where these are is to use Google Earth in the area that you want to fish. And like I said, you kind of need several fishing spots. That way you can pick which one is going to be protected based on the wind direction that day. So we're just going to pick Mission Bay over here just as an example. First thing is you want to make sure your compass over here is correct. You see how my north is north like it should be, because sometimes this map will spin around depending on how you're looking at it. So you know, it can move if you turn the compass over here. And so if it's not correct, then none of this will be correct. So make sure that north is up there. So we know that that's north. So this is gonna be our northern bank. You know, all in here will all be northern. So this would be, like I had said, your northern bank on a northern wind will be protected, because this being north, the wind is coming from the north and blowing off of these banks in here. So that wind's going to be doing that same thing all the way. So this will all be your protected area on a northern wind. We're going to start off with the north wind, and then we'll get into some other stuff in a minute. So that wind is blowing this direction, and the further you get away from that bank, that chop's going to start to build, and it's going to get bigger and bigger as it comes across this bay. The further it goes across that bay, the more chop is going to build. So that was a north wind. Now we'll look at a northwest. And what I do is I just, pretend, okay, I know northwest is coming from this direction. So in my mind, I'm thinking, this is how it's going to be. So that bank still is protected on a northwest wind. So now we'll do a northeast wind, which will be about like this. And for the most part, it is still blowing off of that bank. So all this area will still be pretty calm, real close to that bank. Also on a north wind coming all the way across the bank, these banks over here will be your wind-blown bank. And like I said, this is going to be the most choppiest part of this bay. So on a southern wind, it's just the opposite. Your protected shoreline will be all in here. And also over here. because that south wind is blowing off of the bank. Anytime it blows off the bank, like I said, that's your protected area. And then the same thing would be true for a west wind. It's blowing, this would be your protected west shoreline on a west wind. And on a east wind, this would be your protected shoreline over here because the wind's coming out of the east. So let's go back to a northern wind and we'll find another northern bank, which is this one right in here. Because it's coming off of the bank right there, all this is protected all the way down. And you lose your protection right here. And I'll show you why. Because all that north wind, like we talked about, is coming across this bay and building chop. And it's going to be breaking, those waves will be breaking all on this bank right here. So it starts its process all over again on this bank. And this will be your protected bank. It's going to be real calm in here. And that chop will start to build the further you get out from this new protected bank or shoreline. Like I said, you lose your protection about right here because that wind was coming all the way, and it's going to continue. That chop will continue out this way because there was nothing right here to break it up. So it'll still be real choppy in here, but not so much down here, and definitely not over here. This is all protected on a north wind all the way up. I'm using north winds as an example mostly because that's mostly what we're having right now in the wintertime is north winds for the most part. So let's just say we were able to launch right in here for whatever, which you can't, but yeah, you know, that north wind's been coming pretty far. It's going to be pretty choppy. You're going to have to fight that chop to get to the protected area. This is your protected area on the north wind. So you had to fight that chop all the way in here, but now you're fishing in some pretty calm water. So at least you'll be fishing comfortably on this northern shoreline. You won't be fighting the chop as you're fishing. So for me, that's what I like to do. I like to get to the protected areas. And like I said, you know, sometimes you got to fight the chop to get to it. So let's just say, for an example, we had some islands out here. An island there and an island right there. And we'll keep the launch area right there. We'll just say that we were launching right there. We would be fighting all that chop right in here. And we would try to get to this island. And as soon as you get to the island, we're going to be protected now right in here. Same thing, getting to the next island. It's going to be real choppy in here, but as soon as you get to the island, you're going to be fishing protected area right in there. And then it'll be choppy again because that north wind's blowing this way. It's blowing right through these two islands, and that chop will continue because there was nothing in between those two islands to break up that chop. And if it was a south wind blowing that way, and you would launch right here, then you would try to get to this side of the island. And now all of this will be protected. And then you're going to have chop in here. And then this side of the island will be protected. And once again, it's because that south wind is coming off of this bank or this island. So that's your protected areas, your protected side on a south wind. Even if you're in a boat, you still, you know, this will still work for you because even when you're in a boat, if it's real windy and there's some chop, you're going to have that splash in your face. And unfortunately, you'll have to have that happen until you get to the protected water. So fishing in the wind is definitely doable, and I catch good fish on windy days. I actually prefer it to be some wind, but like I said, I fish the protected water. So So another thing to remember about protected areas is your real small areas are going to be protected. So you would have to fight that chop maybe to get into some of this marsh. Let's say you wanted to go up this little creek and fish in these little back lakes over here. These back lakes are real small, so the chop doesn't have time to build in these little lakes, and it won't be very choppy in these lakes. So that's another thing I do, is I fish the smaller bodies of water on the real windy days, preferably. And all your creeks, you know, they make so many turns and bends that they are mostly protected, and they don't get very choppy in the creek. So you could fish any of these creeks, any of the creek openings, the creek mouths and stuff. So this is one of those things I had to learn on my own. It took me a little while of struggling. I just had a paddle kayak when I first started, and I literally had to call in sick to work a few times because I was so freaking sore fighting that wind. And it's just one of those things that you got to kind of learn on your own, but hopefully this video will help you to know and to identify where is the protected water based on the wind direction. We also have wind shifts and wind changes that happen. On days like that, the best advice for you would be to fish areas with a bunch of islands, a bunch of structures that will break up the wind from all kinds of directions. That way, it's impossible for it to get real choppy in there. Sometimes it's hard to find those areas, but we do have a few of those areas around. So I hope the tips were helpful. Thanks for watching, and tight lines, y'all.